5 years ago, if you would have told me I'd be recommending anything other than GoPro for underwater filming with a casual action camera, I would have laughed so hard I'd fog up my dive mask. But after years of missed shots, dead batteries, overheating, and more frustration, more than I'd like to admit, maybe it was time for a change. Strap on your fins because we're going for a deep dive into the battle for the ages. GoPro versus the DJI action camera. Today, I'll break down what really matters when picking the right camera for your next underwater adventure. First, a brief history on these cameras. A few years ago, when DJI first entered the action camera scene, many people raised an eyebrow. The camera looked suspiciously like a GoPro Hero, and the critics were quick to label it a copycat. But DJI was already dominating the drone market. They weren't here to just imitate, they were here to compete. At the time, GoPro was starting to show signs of stagnation. Tiny incremental updates between hardware updates between different versions of GoPro, no real new tech, a high price tag, a closed ecosystem, and DJI saw the gap and went after it. Immediately, they launched with longer battery life, a front screen, competitive software, and higher low-light performances. Finally, GoPro had a real competitor. So when I visited Lambay, Indonesia, I thought to myself, a macro paradise for photographers and videographers, but a kind of nightmare for action cameras. We're talking low light, murky waters, and teeny tiny little critters. I had my aging GoPro 10 in hand, but with the new shiny GoPro Hero 13 and the DJI Action 5 both out, I had to ask myself, do I stick with the familiar or try something new? Spoiler, I went with the DJI Action 5. And for science and curiosity, I put it to test next to the Hero 10, which I know it's not a fair comparison, but honestly, GoPro has not innovated significantly between 10 and 13, which led to me buying the Action 5. It was a clear winner. Further, when I was really trying to decide the Action 5, I was really hard pressed to buy the GoPro 13. I already have so much GoPro gear, I might as well stick with the ecosystem. But in my research, in a lot of my findings that I'm going to share with you in this video, I ultimately went the other way. And you'll see why shortly. The key difference between these cameras lies in their sensors. The DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro boasts a 1/1.3 inch sensor, while the GoPro Hero 10 has a 1/2.3 inch sensor. The size difference translates to significant advantages in low light situations like Lambay's murky waters. For example, the Hero really shows a lot of dark green and faded coloring, while with the Action, it still had some fairly crisp looking video and stills. The effect is even more dramatic in the photos I took. As many of you already know, both cameras suck in their ability to focus when you get too close to a subject. But surprisingly, it seemed like the old Hero 10 was a tiny bit better here despite being several generations behind. The colors do seem to pop more with the Action 5 II, as we can see in the side-by-side comparison, preserving subtle gradients and patterns that make these creatures so fascinating. I did have higher hopes for the Action 5 in being able to capture some things like this flamboyant cuttlefish, but as you can see, it came out a little softer than I hoped. Also, random issue, some of my stills with the Action 5 had a weird round framer along the edges. Turns out I left it on the default wide mode and caught a bit of the dive housing. Just something to tweak before your next dive trip with the Action 5. You can definitely see the differences in the side-by-sides. And while yes, the Action 5 is a few generations ahead of the Hero 10, the jump from GoPro 10 to 13, as I mentioned earlier, is not stellar. And I know some of you might be asking, why is Don even bothering with small things with an action camera? I will say action cameras are really nice for divers. There are some entry-level cameras, which may be worth a video of its own that I can go into more a different time for stills and video, and they do a little bit better than an action camera. But action cameras are really small, and really any diver can take these things, put it on a stick with a little dive housing, and anyone can take these things and mount it pretty much anywhere. So these things are really nice for almost all divers. Some small cameras with minimal dive housing are still nice, but then the next level up is these giant things that are as big as a diver propelled vehicle. So that's really committing. They're expensive, and if you go that far, kudos to you. These things are nothing comparison to those. But these are really the next friend for most divers without going all in for a big camera. So it's reasonable that I'd like to take an action camera and see how it does with small stuff in land-based. So that's my story. Next, let's talk about features. The kind that actually matter when you're underwater and the whale shark suddenly shows up. You fumble with your camera, hit record, and great! You're in time-lapse mode. Footage absolutely ruined. Yeah, this happened to me all the time with the GoPro. You constantly have to cycle through the different modes, and you better hope you're in the right mode when you press record. The Action 5 fixes a lot of that frustration. First, the display. It's bigger, brighter, and I can actually see what I'm trying to film. I noticed that sometimes the footage looks sharper on the screen than it ends up being, but hey, still better than guessing. And the ability to customize mode selection is a game changer underwater. I don't need to scroll past time lapse or slow-mo mid-dive. With Action 5, I just pick the modes I actually want to use. Simple, smart, and it really just photo and video. Keep it simple, especially when you're diving. Just keep everything simple. And the battery life, considering Hero 10 and 12 use the same battery type, and the GoPro 13 has a new, uninspiring battery, the Action 5 really shined. I was impressed. I was getting through two 70 to 80 minute dives on one charge. The Action 5 also turns on so fast that I actually want to use the auto power off feature. It saves battery, and since it powers back up in seconds, there's no downside. For the Hero 10, I'd carry one battery with me for every dive and have a charge-a-thon at nighttime. But when you buy the Action 5 combo package, it comes with an awesome charging case that fits spare batteries and charges them on the go. Why didn't GoPro ever do this? And they still don't have it either, at least not in their ecosystem. I spent a lot of money, more than I'm proud of, on GoPro gear through the years, and I nearly got the same value out of the box, if not more, for the purchase price of the Action 5. And one more thing for the Action 5 is built-in memory. It's a small feature that's a huge deal when you forget your SD card. Ask me, how do I know that? GoPro doesn't have this. The Action 5 literally saved my dive footage as I forgot to insert my SD card on the first day using it, so that's a really nice feature. I used dive housing for both cameras and both worked well. No issues, but the Action camera came with some really nice quality moisture absorbers, which I just felt was a pretty nice touch. I didn't get that with GoPro. Also, the Action 5's 20-meter waterproofing is better than GoPro's 10-meter waterproofing when you aren't using a dive housing. So if the dive housing floods, you're less likely to lose the camera and, more importantly, the film on it. I really appreciated how Action also evolved the mounting system. DJI kept things GoPro compatible. Thank you. I can still use some of my GoPro gear, but added a magnetic mount option, which is cool for quick swaps. Still, when it comes to underwater videography, the features that truly matter often aren't the ones plastered on the box. Sure, image quality is crucial, but the ability to actually use your camera effectively in challenging conditions can be the difference between capturing that elusive shot or coming up empty-handed. And by the way, I'm starting a brand new newsletter that I'm hoping to send out on a monthly basis in the coming months. If you're interested, check that out in the description. I like to do my YouTube videos on something that's more timeless for the ages, and so I really can't keep up with the latest and greatest dive news. But with a newsletter, I can talk about the latest and greatest news a lot more easier, because obviously you don't need to produce a whole film, script it and edit it and prepare it for YouTube. is much easier to stay up to date with the latest and greatest news in a newsletter. So if you're interested, sign up below. You can unsubscribe anytime. Let's talk about upgrades. The DJI Action 5 versus the GoPro 13. Are these newer cameras really worth the money? First of all, if you already own one, I fear most of these action cameras aren't evolving as fast as you'd wish. It's like when you buy a new phone. Can you actually spot the difference between an iPhone of this year versus the one of last year? For those diehards, I'm sure you can, but for most regular people, probably not. But let's talk about the prices. The DJI Action 5 starts at about $380 for the standard combination, while the GoPro Hero 13 Black costs $450 for the basic bundle. That is a hefty $71 price difference. And we're not even talking about all the accessories you'd probably want for GoPro. While the Action is fairly good on its own, and both require dive housing sold separately or a part of combo packages. GoPro has long been the action camera leader, but their recent updates feel a little minor, to say the least. Many users feel that improvements in the Hero 13 are minimal, me included, to the DJI's advancements. Every single model of DJI Action has been fairly substantial. I'm kind of excited to see where they leap with the next versions. The Hero 13 adds a macro lens and an ND filters. Nice, but they're extra and not backwards compatible. It's a truly expensive ecosystem, and I felt trapped in that ecosystem. DJI seems to be taking a different approach with the Action 5, focusing on core improvements that matter across the board, like better sensors, a battery life that lasts double that of the Hero, and USB-C compatibility all across the board. Also worth noting, all GoPro models that I tested, and I've even heard the 13 has this issue, have overheating issues. And older models crashed on me more than once at the start of a dive, basically meaning I had no footage on that dive. I really didn't feel comfortable just opening a dive housing and restarting the camera. The screen would just freeze and burn the battery. I went in this great frenzy of searching the forums and scouring the internet for solutions. Some would say my SD card was too slow. I upgraded the SD card, still happened to me. I upgraded the firmware and I went on this great journey, and after the end of it, it still froze on me on a dive, so I don't know. I'm not sure I will ever find a solution. It's just kind of a GoPro feature at this point. Instability. And this is super critical for diving because you can't just restart it with the buttons that are exposed. The turn it off and on button actually wouldn't work, so the only way that I knew how to basically restart it was to open the battery compartment and pull out the battery and then put it back in. That was the only fix. The Action, while somewhat new to me still, seems to be doing much more stably and performing well. It hasn't crashed on me yet, at least. Maybe give it more time. We'll see in retrospect, maybe a year from now, I'll be able to say it crashed on me or not, but I'd probably put at least 20 or 30 dives on this thing now and it's still performing admirably. Not a single crash yet, or should I say hang. And even with the latest GoPro 13, it still has an inferior sensor. It's only 1 over 1.9 inch versus the Action's, as I mentioned earlier, 1 over 1.3 inch. And that gives a win to the Action. Even head to head with the most modern model, still a win. So what does this mean for us scuba divers? The Osmo Action 5 Pro offers a more affordable entry point, longer battery life, and innovative features that address common underwater videographer challenges. It's also part of an ecosystem that is compatible with every single piece of tech out there, which is a massive advantage. The Action really hasn't embraced some kind of private ecosystem. They're fairly open and work with most other things that you can buy off the market. And to shoot these videos, I also bought the DJI Microphone 2, which is compatible with every single device out there. But for GoPro, you need to buy extra gear to make it work. I was having to buy this like social influencer mod setup just to kind of make it work kind of with a camera, and I was having to plug wires between it. It looked like a Frankenstein, and definitely not something I wanted to travel with. You know, it wasn't wireless. It's a nightmare. If you've ever tried to do something sophisticated GoPro, you probably know what I'm talking about, but it goes beyond diving. But I will say, just in general, the ecosystem for Action 5 is much easier. GoPro really tried to be the Apple of action cameras. They tried to force people into their exclusive ecosystem, and it's painfully backfiring on them. Also, the Action 5 is a bit smaller and lighter than the GoPro 13, handy when packing gear for travel. And the stabilization, GoPro 13 seems to win this one. But honestly, underwater, I don't use stabilization much. It crops the frame too much, and currents tend to make it a bit pointless anyways. If you have good buoyancy and good trim, I never really needed stabilization on my action camera. Maybe it's just not very important to me. Some lower stabilization may help, but the camera, when I'm trying to film, shouldn't be very shaky. I'm not usually one to lean so drastically to one side, but after years of being a loyal GoPro customer, I really was hoping the GoPro 13 would wow me. And before you ask, this is not sponsored by either of these cameras. I am not getting paid by anyone here. I'm just sharing my opinion with you to hopefully save you money and really give it to you point blank, share my opinion, and I'd love for you to share yours in the comments down below. I do hope the GoPro brings some stellar innovations with the GoPro 14, but at this point, DJI Action Series is really starting to stand up as a more premium model of action camera for scuba diving in my book. The Action 5 just feels like a smarter move, especially for divers. Better low light performance, smarter features, and fewer "oh no, I missed that shot" moments, and a friendlier ecosystem. There's still room for improvement, especially on the close-up macro stuff. I'd love for either of these cameras to have some kind of physical zoom that I can do while diving on demand, and easier ability to change settings while diving, but this camera pushes the boundaries in all the right ways. There is still room for GoPro to compete, and they just might. After all, healthy competition does push innovation in my opinion. I do not want GoPro to suffer or go down. I want them to continue to compete, and so maybe in future years I can say GoPro made a great comeback. So we'll see how this video ages. Is it gonna age like fine wine or age like milk? We'll find out. Have you tried the Action 5 underwater yet? Still loyal to GoPro? Let me know your thoughts. And if you're in the market for other scuba gear, be sure to click on this series, and I know you're gonna love it. Until next time.